Joining us now to discuss the crypto markets is XBTO Group Head of Trading, Paul Eisma. Paul, great to have you this afternoon. So off the bat, your reaction to the GBTC discount narrowing?
Thanks for having me. Belated Happy New Year. Yeah, that seems to be, at the forefront of, I guess, the first 10 days of 2023. There's some dynamics that this year, the Fir Tree, lawsuit, the potential Valkyrie coming in, there's, dynamics at play that increase the probability that would narrow this discount. Would it go all the way to par? That's I guess to be seen. But this is, like I said, this is fresh. There's obviously Cameron's letter out today, and then there was a letter just an hour ago, from Barry, try to address some of these issues. But yeah, it's something that participants are closely watching, and I think to put new capital at work for this higher probability that the discount may narrow, not necessarily go to par. You can, like people like Block Tower have come in to put some money to work, and others have been looking at this discount and putting money to work in and around towards the end of the year.
Maybe you can explain why we're seeing the GBTC discount narrowing.
Yeah, like I said, there's the way GBTC works is, there's, it's locked up for, there's a 6-month lockup, there's a yearly lockup. Again, as we get more, information on where this dynamic may be heading. In other words, there's a greater probability that some potential outcome could be somewhat positive that could narrow this discount, right? Whether it's I think a low delta probability is obviously an ETF conversion, right? That's probably the lowest probability. But again, whether it's a combination of investors coming together to try and influence either the regulators to, further pressure, DCG to, come to some sort of, non-suing or non-legal, outside of court conclusion, I think is what we may see for, the next couple of quarters, right? So it's really still being played out in, real time. But is it Valkyrie? Is more lawsuits going to come? But clearly, there's again, people have cash to potentially put to work. Valuations are much better given where BTC is and obviously where this discount is. So it makes sense in the beginning of this year that from an asymmetric risk reward standpoint that it this could be a decent bet, at least for narrowing.
All right. So what do you think will be the ultimate impact of Bitcoin? Remarkably, despite all these Gemini, DCG, Genesis troubles, Bitcoin is pretty steady. It's actually gone a bit of a bounce since the start of the week. But, if something at Grayscale resolves and GBTC has liquidation or redemptions, would that potentially put liquidation pressure on BTC?
There's again, it's all about probabilities, right? I think that's a scenario that is probably low probability because I think, what's
the best case scenario versus the worst case scenario then?
Well, we don't want to talk about the worst case scenario. Obviously, that's a low probability where, let's just say there's some dynamic where obviously the 10 billion would come to market. I don't think anybody wants that. There's the dynamic where something on a legal aspect or something in the the documentation that gives the ability to make the the shareholders be able to trade at par. I don't think that's a highly likely scenario as well. I think, the market's looking for clarity, right? This is this is just confusion right now, right? And so, it makes sense that we're still in this range. Dare I say we're still tethered to, traditional asset markets, which which means, the inflation and the employment data, and, CPI, which comes out tomorrow, the payrolls number, which came out last Friday, which was somewhat Goldilocks. We are, if we get some clarity on this DCG situation, then it could be supportive of, the broader market, that we can, maybe, trend a little bit to the higher end of the range. But yeah, those, it's really hard to, game sort of,
Well,
game
XBTO
scenario.
Group sees a lot of the institutional activity. Do you also assist with GBTC trades at all? And if so, what kind of activity are you seeing?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Let's just say we've seen folks nibbling at, in and around these levels. Again, if you look at the discount, where the I guess the implied share price would be, the risk reward, 0 to non-zero or particularly higher, it could be looked at as almost like a premium for a call option, that would have some clarity, potentially in 6 to 12 months. That convexity to have your premium increase, so to speak, so the share price. Again, I think if there's some path forward that's going to give the market, sort of an exhale or a deep breath, that I think will help, support not only GBTC but also Bitcoin. But yeah, we see people nibbling at these opportunities as the probabilities of some of the scenario playing out become a little higher.